Next on Currents News, in the aftermath of the Notre Dame inferno and the damage it caused, the focus now shifts to how the disaster happened. We'll have the latest from Paris. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio and Catholic leaders around the world are reacting to the fire and to rebuilding the great church.
The Notre Dame inferno is especially painful at one Brooklyn parish. I'm Emily Druby, and I'll have their story.
The next major event of Holy Week is tonight, when the church's sacred oils are blessed. The news starts right now. The firefighters of Paris who battled the Notre Dame inferno are being called heroes tonight. Miraculously, many of the cathedral's relics have been saved and only one person was injured. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. Investigators are now focusing on the cause of the massive fire. The blaze burned for hours in the landmark symbol of the Catholic faith. The President of France and church leaders around the world are vowing Notre Dame will be rebuilt. Mary Maloney has the latest from Paris.
Haunting new images show the scale of damage inside the Notre Dame Cathedral. Monday's fire sent shockwaves around Paris and around the world.
I went to see it with my own eyes. I just couldn't believe it.
The central spire and a majority of the 13th century wooden roof were largely destroyed. There are some reasons to be thankful.
Honestly, I must say, it looks better than I thought. The firemen did their work very good.
Much of the beloved cathedral's interior is still intact, and its most precious relics saved, including the crown of thorns, which some believe was placed on the head of Jesus during the crucifixion. The focus now turning to the fire's cause. The Paris prosecutor says while an investigation continues, it was likely accidental. French President Emmanuel Macron pledging to rebuild, as hundreds of millions of dollars have already been donated.
There's a great deal to be rebuilt, and we will make the Cathedral of Notre Dame even more beautiful. We can do this.
President Trump spoke with Macron over the phone Tuesday morning, offering condolences. Across the world, there are signs and sounds of solidarity. St. Patrick's Cathedral, New York City, ringing its bells at 12:50 p.m. Eastern, marking 24 hours since the fire started. I'm Mary Maloney reporting.
Some of these sacred relics saved from the inferno, in addition to the crown of thorns, have been displayed in a tweet from the mayor of Paris. The holy objects include the tunic of Saint Louis. Major art pieces, candle holders, chairs, and kneelers were also saved. A series of large paintings have been transferred to the Louvre. Now, that crown of thorns was saved from the flames by Father Jean-Marc Fournier, the chaplain of the Paris Fire Department. The priest entered the burning cathedral with firefighters and rescued that priceless relic. Pope Francis is assuring the Catholics of France that he is close to them at this trying time, and he's also praying that the ravaged cathedral will be restored. Sean Richardson reports.
The Pope sent this message to the Archbishop of Paris, along with a blessing to Paris and France. Pope Francis desires that Notre Dame, with the help of all in reconstruction work, will once again be this beautiful treasure trove in the heart of the city, sign of the faith of those who built it, Mother Church of your diocese, an architectural and spiritual heritage of Paris, France, and humanity. The Holy See is saddened and expresses its solidarity for what happened in Paris. Alessandro Gisotti insisted that the Cathedral of Paris is not just a heritage for Catholics alone.
Notre Dame rimarrà sempre un luogo dove
Notre Dame will continue to be a place where all, as we have seen in these dramatic hours, believers and non-believers can come together during the most important moments in history for France. Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi, in charge of pontifical relations with culture, also sent a message of hope.
mi impressionava in maniera
I was impressed to see many Parisians and tourists crying at what was happening. This shows that the cathedral, the great cathedrals, the great basilicas are not a pile of stones, but living bodies. The last pope to visit Notre Dame was Benedict XVI. He went there 11 years ago in September 2018. During his trip, he met with religious, priests and deacons. In Rome, Sean Richardson, Currents News.
As the Notre Dame inferno roared into the night, spontaneous prayer vigils formed along the streets of Paris. Parisians singing hymns, on their knees praying as they watched their beloved Notre Dame Cathedral burn. The citizens prayed for the firefighters and for the restoration of Notre Dame. Once firefighters controlled those flames, they discovered a remarkable sight inside the cathedral. Through the smoke, they could see that miraculously the altar and cross above it survived that inferno, the gold cross glowing in the darkness. The rebuilding of Notre Dame, the Catholic symbol that is famous around the world, will take time. The national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, joins us now to discuss those plans and safety precautions for other high-profile churches. Christopher, thank you so much for being with us. We were all stunned by this. What has been the reaction to the plans to rebuild the cathedral here in the U.S.?
Liz, I think everyone is saying we must rebuild and we want to do our part. The University of Notre Dame out in South Bend, who has no formal relationship with the Basilica in Paris, has said they're going to kick in $100,000 right away. The Basilica of the National Shrine in Washington, D.C. have said they're going to help spearhead some fundraising efforts. So we've already seen just an immediate outpouring in the first 24 hours.
Christopher, adding to the extent of this tragedy, it comes at the beginning of a very important time for Catholics. This is Holy Week. This will obviously cause problems with celebrating liturgy. What are the contingency plans, if you know? Yeah,
Liz, one of the things is the immediate question is, where are all the folks that flock to Paris to attend the Holy Week liturgy is going to go? And so Archbishop Michel Aupetit of Paris said today that tomorrow the Chrism Mass will take place in Saint-Sulpice, which is one of Paris's most historic churches. It's just about a mile from the Cathedral of Notre Dame. We don't know about the rest of the Holy Week schedule, but I guess they're taking it one day at a time, as you might imagine.
Now, with all this being said, a new spotlight has been put on fire safety for other high-profile churches, as you might imagine, and that includes St. Patrick's Cathedral here in New York, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. What measures, if any, are in place to prevent another tragedy like this?
Yeah, there's one of the things Cardinal Dolan spoke about today. He said, one of my first thoughts is, my gosh, could this happen to our own beloved cathedral here in New York? And he said, fortunately, because of the massive restoration project that was just completed a few years ago, new sprinklers were installed and the wood at the top replaced with some flame retardant. And so they're much more optimistic that should such a tragedy take place in New York, that it could withstand it better. In Rome, the same situation. Fortunately, the Basilica in Rome has been restored more recently than that of Notre Dame.
All right. Well, faith, hope, and optimism. Thank you so much, Christopher. Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio said today that as Catholics throughout the world observe the holiest week of the year, hearts are heavy after watching the catastrophic fire that engulfed Notre Dame. He recalled when he first visited the famous landmark.
The first time I saw it was 14 years old. I was on a Boy Scout pilgrimage to Europe that time, and it was the 100th anniversary of Lourdes, and we were in Paris, and we went there, of course, and it's something you never forget. I grew up right across the street from the cathedral in Newark, which is really a French Gothic cathedral also, and we went to Chartres after that to see it, and just, in my mind, cathedrals make a big impression, and they're really important. Well, it's certainly sad to see Notre Dame de Paris up in flames and destroyed, but not totally destroyed. Thank God, the towers and probably can be reconstructed in a more modern way. 850 years is a long time for a building to last with wooden timbers. So maybe somehow some good will come out of it.
Bishop DiMarzio said he looks to the future as the Cathedral of Notre Dame is rebuilt. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan offered support to the Catholics of France after the Notre Dame inferno. He spoke to reporters outside St. Patrick's Cathedral.
I just thought it would be extraordinarily appropriate if we publicly expressed, on behalf of our beloved St. Patrick's Cathedral and on behalf of the citizens of New York, the love, the solidarity, the prayers, and the sorrow that we feel over the devastating fire at Notre Dame Cathedral.
Earlier in the day, the Cardinal prayed inside St. Patrick's for the Blessed Virgin Mary's intercession so that God would preserve Notre Dame. The Notre Dame inferno was especially painful at a Brooklyn parish in Cobble Hill. Many in the congregation are French. Currents News' Emily Druby has that story.
With the massive blaze at Notre Dame finally tamed, the focus is now on rebuilding and recovering. In the Brooklyn Diocese, the aftermath of the devastating blaze hitting the parish of St. Paul and St. Agnes in Cobble Hill especially hard because of their booming French population and weekly French Mass. Father Paul Anel heads the diocese French ministry. He was devastated after hearing the news.
Complete disbelief. I mean, you would never think, this is such a dear building, such an old building.
While he's from France, Father Anel is now thousands of miles away at Divine Mercy in Williamsburg, where he's assigned part-time. Just one day after the fire, he prays at the foot of a statue of the Virgin Mary, to whom the Notre Dame Cathedral is consecrated. Father Anel believes the fire could be a sign from God.
Also the fact that the spire fell because the fire is what points to heaven. And I think it's also like a wake-up call for us, priests, and for the church, that our mission is to point to heaven. We're a little bit too concerned about this earth and teaching people how to live well and how to be in harmony and at peace. God's telling us, don't forget, this is your mission. You're about prepare people for eternity.
He's not alone when it comes to finding greater meaning in the fire. Father Alex Morard of St. Paul and St. Agnes says to him the fire was symbolic.
It's recalling me to conversion, to stick to the Lord, to look for a deeper faith. To reconsider how I'm living this relationship with the Lord, with others.
Both priests inspired by how the world has come together to mourn and move forward. With the focus now on the future, many here hopeful that with strong support and fundraising, the historic landmark will eventually be restored. In Cobble Hill, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Currents News will have continuing coverage of the Notre Dame inferno. Michelle Powers will be reporting on the scene in Paris with the latest on how the Paris Archdiocese and the magnificent cathedral are rising from the ashes. And there's a lot more news headed your way. A look ahead to a big Holy Week ceremony that prepares the church for the sacraments year-round. Live coverage of the service follows Currents News. Benedict XVI is celebrating his birthday days after he went public with a major essay. The measles outbreak in New York is now being linked to another state. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@thesalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. An important Holy Week liturgy takes place tonight, a Mass that includes most of the priests from the diocese, and it's also a service that makes it possible for them to perform baptisms, confirmations, and last rites. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. Tim.
Liz, the pews of the Co-Cathedral are expected to be packed as Bishop DiMarzio celebrates tonight's Chrism Mass with nearly 300 priests in attendance. It's an annual tradition dating back centuries, the celebration of the Chrism Mass when the church's holy oils are blessed.
Bless this oil and sanctify it for our use.
Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio will pray over 3 oils used during the sacraments, with nearly every priest of the Brooklyn Diocese extending their hands during the ceremony. Earlier today, the bishop described what the oils are used for.
The chrism for baptism, for confirmation, for the ordinations, a sacrament of the sick, oil of the sick, and then the oil of catechumens to bring new people into the church.
People in attendance will bring the oils back to their parishes, where the oils will be used throughout the year, administering the sacraments. The Chrism Mass is also the time for priests and deacons to renew their vows. Bishop DiMarzio will address them during the liturgy. In this year's homily, the bishop plans to discuss the protection of minors in the midst of the church's sexual abuse struggles.
How we need to deal with that and how important it is that we are honest, transparent, and try to make sense out of what happened, although it's something that's wrong. You make sense out of something that's wrong by looking at the positive efforts to right it, to make it better.
And you can watch Bishop DiMarzio celebrate the Chrism Mass live right here on Net TV at 7:30. In Prospect Heights, Tim Harfman, Currents News. Back to you, Liz.
Tim, it is such an important service. What else can you tell us about the blessing of the oils?
Well, the 3 oils will be carried into the co-cathedral by different members of the faithful. Usually a deacon who will be ordained to the priesthood in June processes in with the chrism oil. The oil of the sick is usually brought in by a hospital chaplain, and the oil of the catechumens usually carried by members, worshipers who will receive their sacraments at the Easter Vigil. Liz.
All right, Tim, thank you so much for that report. Net TV is the place to be for the Holy Week coverage. Special live programs will be televised throughout Christianity's most important time of the year. Following Currents News tonight, the Chrism Mass, celebrated by Bishop DiMarzio from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph, and that airs live at 7:30 p.m. On Holy Thursday, the Chrism Mass from the Vatican will be broadcast at 2:30 p.m. Currents News will air at a special time, 6:30 p.m., and we will be followed by the Mass of the Lord's Supper celebrated by Bishop DiMarzio at St. James Basilica at 7 p.m. Now, on Good Friday, the Passion of the Lord will be commemorated at St. James Basilica. Live coverage begins at 3 p.m. Currents News again airs at a special time, 6:30 p.m., ahead of the Way of the Cross with Pope Francis presiding from Rome at 7 p.m. The Easter Vigil from the Vatican will be televised at 2:30 p.m. The vigil at St. James Basilica will get underway at 8 p.m. And the full Holy Week television schedule is posted at netny.tv. Pope Francis offered some advice to an audience of teachers and high school students. Stay off your phones and be careful about becoming addicted.
Liberatevi dalla dipendenza del telefonino, per favore. Voi sicuramente avete sentito parlare del dramma delle dipendenze, no? Sicuro, sì, padre. Dipendenze delle droghe. Ma quando tu diventerai schiavo del telefonino, perderai la tua libertà.
Very good advice. The Holy Father also told the teens not to be afraid of silence, adding they should learn to listen to or write down what is going on in their hearts. Pope Benedict turns 92 today. Francis made a special visit to the Pope Emeritus to wish him a happy birthday on the eve of the very special occasion. Melissa Butts has more from Rome.
Not even 1 week after Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI broke his silence with an 11-page essay reflecting on the sexual abuse crisis, he's in the spotlight once again for his birthday. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI turns 92 today. Pope Francis made a visit on the eve of his birthday to give the Pope Emeritus best wishes for his upcoming year. In the past, he celebrated his birthday with Bavarian music and beer, but this year his celebration will be completely in private. Last year, his personal secretary, Georg Ganswein, commented on his academic work.
Whether he's writing something important or not, I do not know, but he himself said that we should not expect anything academic.
Yet the February summit on abuse brought about a change. Now the world seems to be giving a critical eye to his 6,000-word essay on sexual abuse. He attributes the cause to the sexual revolution of the 1960s and the liberal ideas that emerged after the Second Vatican Council. As Joseph Ratzinger is a noted theologian, he thus mentions how moral theology has eroded over time and affected the formation of priests and bishops. Argentine Cardinal Leonardo Sandri explains the final part of his piece, The Need for God.
What it questions is who can believe this very serious and frightening problem of abuse can be solved without God or by leaving him aside.
Ratzinger was prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith from 1981 until his election as pope in 2005. He was pope until 2013, when he monumentally resigned from the position. Since his resignation, the Pope Emeritus has promised to remain hidden from the world, residing in a convent on Vatican grounds for the past 6 years. Pope Francis visits him occasionally, just as he did last night on the eve of his birthday. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News. Back to you in New York, Liz.
Thank you, Melissa. Still to come on Currents News, a Jewish school in Williamsburg is shut down as reports show the measles epidemic is spreading from New York to other parts of the country. And Crux correspondent Christopher White spent a few moments with a special person. Your eyes do not deceive you. That is indeed Pope Francis. The story when we come back. The New York City Health Department shut down the preschool at the United Talmudical Academy in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, saying the child care facility failed to show officials its vaccination and attendance records amid a measles outbreak in the neighborhood. The move comes 1 week after Mayor Bill de Blasio declared measles a public health emergency and ordered mandatory vaccinations for people living in Williamsburg, home to a large Orthodox Jewish population. Health officials need the records to make sure unvaccinated students and staff stay out of schools. The ongoing outbreak in New York's Jewish neighborhoods is spreading to other parts of the country. Kristen Holmes has more on this story.
The measles outbreak in New York spreading across the country. Michigan health officials linking an outbreak there back to the Empire State, where officials continue to try and stem the ongoing public health emergency.
I have the authority from the State Commissioner of Health to exclude those children who are not up to date on their immunizations.
The New York outbreak started in October, and while the measles was considered eliminated in the U.S. in 2000, the number of cases has risen in recent years, jumping this year to the second highest level in a quarter of a century. Worldwide, cases are up 300%. Some experts blaming the anti-vaccination movement.
It's completely avoidable. That's the frustrating aspect about it. It's completely avoidable.
Today, New York's Rockland County forcing anyone with measles to stay home for up to 21 days and requiring children have proof of vaccination, immunity, or an exemption form on file at schools and child care facilities.
Newborns, pregnant individuals, and those with weakened immune systems can't get vaccinated. So it's important that everyone around them become vaccinated to protect them.
Last week, New York City's mayor declaring a public health emergency, requiring vaccinations for people living in specific zip codes.
You have an obligation not only to protect your own child, but to also protect the community by getting vaccinated.
5 mothers in New York are now filing a lawsuit against the city for the mandate. Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
Finally tonight, one of our colleagues had a special moment with Pope Francis. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, was in Rome last week to attend a conference on human trafficking sponsored by the Vatican's Department for Migrants and Refugees. While there, he was able to enjoy just a few moments with Pope Francis, who addressed the conference during its closing day on Thursday. The Pope took advantage of his time at the conference to once again condemn human trafficking as crimes against humanity. Francis also asked Christopher to pray for him. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.